Hello everybody and welcome to another video. It is a journey back to the early 2000s for us today as we pop on some funky shades, grab our trench coats and find our nearest telephone line so that we can enter the Matrix. This was the first game to come out based on the Matrix franchise. It was made as a companion piece for the upcoming second film in the franchise, The Matrix Reloaded. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but quickly, let's talk about The Matrix. Written and directed by Lily and Lana Wachowski, the first Matrix film released in 1999, and it follows the story of one Thomas Anderson, a computer programmer by day, computer hacker by night who goes by the alias of Neo. Neo has recently heard about and is in search of something called the Matrix. This leads him to an encounter with another hacker, a woman called Trinity, who eventually leads him to the enigmatic Morpheus, who can tell him just what the Matrix is. First of all, Neo must choose the red pill or the blue pill, with red leading to the truth and blue popping him back into his original life as if nothing had happened. Neo, of course, opts for the red pill, otherwise it would be a very short film, and then he wakes up in this pod in a desolate technological wasteland. We find out from there that humanity, many years ago, developed sentient artificial intelligence. But the AI rose up, a war broke out, and humanity was of course on the losing side. Unfortunately, during the conflict, the sun was blocked out, and the AI needed the sun for energy. So they devised a method to harvest power from humans that they grow and keep in pods. These humans are kept alive and held prisoner in a simulated reality known as the Matrix. However, some humans were able to break free. They rejected the simulated reality and they formed the real-world city of Zion. They rebelled against the machines and aimed to free humanity from the Matrix. Morpheus is led by his particular belief in a being known as the One, a being with the ability to reprogram the Matrix and free humanity. He of course believes that Neo is this prophesized One. Now, on its release, The Matrix was a huge critical and commercial success. It managed to dig its machine-like tentacles into wider pop culture, influencing many a homage and parody even to this day. Throughout the mid-2000s, the franchise would be expanded to include 2 more films, Reloaded and Revolutions, 3 video games, Into the Matrix Online and The Path of Neo, and an animated anthology series known as The Animatrix. Now, after 2005, aside from ongoing content on The Matrix Online, the franchise lay mostly dormant. The Matrix Online would shutter itself a couple of years later. See, the films had been a success commercially, but received a mixed critical reception, and the hype around the franchise did cool down somewhat. We wouldn't see anything else until about 2021, when the 4th film, Resurrections, released to a mixed reception, to say the least, and the release of The Matrix Awakens, which was a now delisted free video game experience that seemed to be more to sell the Unreal Engine than be a game in its own right. Now, back in the mid-2000s, I absolutely adored this franchise. The first film absolutely captivated me with its mix of incredible special effects, the fighting scenes in it, the world and the plot. I watched the VHS of it many times, and I was one who very eagerly awaited the follow-ups and the games as well. I did adore these follow-ups, and when I knew the games there, I was incredibly hyped for them too, especially because they didn't really seem like cash-ins, which were quite common at the time whenever you had a game based on a popular TV show or movie. See, Into the Matrix wasn't just a game about the thing I liked, it was an integral part of this thing. The Matrix Online wasn't just a game, it was the continuation of what had been set up in the final film. Path of Neo wasn't just a game, it was... Oh, alright, I'll admit, I haven't really played Path of Neo much, but look out for that in a future stream. Whilst I'm not massively into the franchise anymore, nor have I really delved into it in a long time, it does have that very special place in my heart. Matrix Online was the first MMORPG that I ever played. I was part of a faction there, and I remember those times fondly, and if anything, because it was the faction leader who I would chat to regularly, and it was her who introduced me to one of my favourite bands, Dream Theater. She knew I was a fan of Pink Floyd, we used to chat on AOL Instant Messenger, and she started sending me snippets of this little 24-minute epic song called Octavarium. I went out, got the album, and I fell in love with that band. And in a way, it was the Matrix that led me to the world of anime. I already knew things like Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon, but I saw movies like Akira and Ghost in the Shell listed as influences on the Matrix, and that helped pique my interest in that as a medium. But that's all for another time or another video. We're here to talk about Into the Matrix, a third-person action game developed by Shining Entertainment and published by Atari, directed and written by the Wachowskis, and as covered, released as a companion piece to the second Matrix film. In Into the Matrix, you play as either Niobe or Ghost as they locate and uncover a message for the city of Zion. It's a warning that the machines are preparing an attack with an army 250,000 strong. The game features live-action footage that was shot during the filming of the second Matrix movie, and it's slotted in there to give players a fully rounded idea of the events leading up to the second movie, during the second movie, and also a little bit afterwards. You will see characters cross over, and the idea was that you would get the full story and context if you played the game and watched the film. Now, as a fan, it made it very exciting to play. So, was it any good? Well, I do remember it fondly, and I am one of many who I've spoken to quite a few who do remember it quite fondly as well. The game was a commercial success, selling around 6 million copies in total. Critically, it didn't really hit the mark. It wasn't bad by any stretch, it sits at around 60 on Metacritic, but review scores are a little bit all over the place. Edge gave it what seems like a harsh 3 out of 10. IGN gave it a 7.2, Game Informer gave it an 8.5, and Eurogamer gave it a 4. So it's really mixed, and that all contributes to that average of about 6. Some of the usual movie tie-in criticisms were seen amongst the reviewers. The game, for them, felt unfinished, maybe a little bit rushed, because they had to release it in time for the movie. We've seen a few bugs in places, and maybe it was a little bit fiddly to play. One outlet did actually say that by creating a game to sit as a companion piece for the movie, it might have actually contributed in devaluing the movie somewhat. But there was a lot to praise here. The animations got a lot of praise, the motion capture in particular was singled out, as well as the hand-to-hand combat. So I do remember liking this a lot when I was younger, but, younger, maybe a bit more easily pleased back then. I mean, I'm still fairly easily pleased now, but I do have a bit of a better eye for criticism, I would say. And as such, I've been wanting to try this one again for quite some time. So we are going to be playing the GameCube version of the game, which actually uniquely shipped on 2 discs, due to the capacity of a GameCube CD. There's no particular reason for me wanting to play this game, it just happens to be the one I bought from CEX a couple of years ago, and plus, it's quite nice to get the GameCube out. So, let's get into it, shall we? Our game begins with a live-action cutscene. This introduces us to one of our main characters, Ghost, as well as the operator of Ghost and Niobe's ship, a man called Sparks. For context, an operator, they tend to be a natural-born member of society. Someone who was born naturally, they weren't freed from the Matrix, but as they've grown up, they've learned how to decipher code from the Matrix from the outside. They handle plugging the rebels into the system, guiding them where possible, loading in side programs to give them weaponry or other useful items, and they'll also warn them of threats and where nearby exits are. We learn that something is going down, and then Niobe, the captain of the ship, turns up. Niobe, our other main character. Both of them are plugged into the Matrix, and we get to choose who I want to play as. So I pick Niobe, and our story begins. A story which begins, like all good ones, with a trip to the post office. There's a package of high importance that's been left here by the crew of the Osiris, whose ship has been destroyed. The events of this are actually chronicled in one of the episodes of the Animatrix. Niobe has decided to lead a charge to retrieve the information and why it was highly sought after. This first level is really about getting you used to the game, how the characters control and move with some combat and other stuff thrown in. The game's levels are broken up into these smaller stages, which serve as checkpoints, unlike a modern game where the post office would be one huge interrupted level with a little icon that pops up when it's a checkpoint. Now, some of these stages can be quite lengthy, others, including one in the middle of the game, can be ridiculously short. Control-wise, there's a little bit of jank here. It certainly feels like an early 2000s game, but it's nothing too bad really. The player movement feels a little bit fast and it lacks any sort of manual camera control. Instead, the camera is at a fixed position behind the player, and as the player turns, the camera also turns to hopefully match that movement. For the most part, it does, but there are some moments where you will wish you had a little bit of finer control. One thing I will admit to right now, I haven't used my GameCube quite as much as I would have liked to all the years I've had it. I'm still not fully used to using it for more action-based games, so there are a few moments I got my buttons mixed up. Also, as another side note, I'm using a third-party Nixty controller here, not that I think it makes any difference. We move through a few corridors before getting to our first bits of combat. The game is more focused on hand-to-hand than gunplay, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but when you get into a fight with an enemy, the camera will try to frame it side-on to give a more cinematic feel to things. The controls here, pretty easy to get the grips with. You have a button for punching, for kicking, for blocking. You can also throw your enemy and disarm them if they have a weapon. If you go some time without being hit, you'll see your health recharge. So a lot of the floor here is about taking out a group of enemies, recharging your health before moving on to the next batch. So let's continue through the post office, which is incredibly huge. We fight some enemies, dodge some bullets, it's quite nice. We do, however, come to one part where some of the control jank and that inability to line up the camera comes into play. The cops use tear gas, which renders the lower parts of one area inaccessible, so you have to jump across a few tight platforms, whilst being shot at, I might add. It took me a handful of goes to really manage due to how fiddly the controls could be. I don't think it's too taxing for people, but it was definitely awkward. Now I'll briefly touch on some other bits of combat. You're taught about a cover system. I didn't like it. It felt like more of a hindrance than anything. You push up against a flat wall and it puts you into cover. It's incredibly sticky and I did not find any benefit to it at all. You can maybe do some cool visual stuff from it, but it did not seem useful from a gameplay perspective. Something much more useful though was the use of bullet time, represented by a focus meter on the bottom right of the screen. Hold down the left trigger and time will slow down, allowing you to dodge bullets and really get an advantage over your enemy. As you'll see throughout this review, this is one of your most valuable assets and it allows you to pull off some absolutely awesome looking moves. The final thing, which I did try to use in this level, and I did not like it at first, was the gunplay. For the first few levels, I actually thought the guns were pretty awful. You tap a button to pull out your currently held weapon, then the same button to fire it at your target. A target the game chooses based on proximity and camera direction. It's fiddly, it's awkward, you don't get much ammo, and at times it feels useless. That is until, and I will touch on this as we talk about the other parts of the game, you realise that the gunplay isn't really the point. The guns are a last resort, or a way of starting the fight. Your main weapons here are your fists and your feet. Still, combining focus mode and the guns allows you to pull off some pretty sick stuff. We managed to get out of the post office, and then we're put into a driving segment. There aren't too many of these in the game, and thankfully, because I will be honest, they are not great. Now, part of this is because in the first driving sequence, I didn't realise you could change the camera view. So I stayed in this horrible interior view that felt awkwardly centred and really unhelpful. The other problem is that it was just a little bit dull. You're driving this location while police try to stop you, badly I might add. Just didn't really feel good to play. I was kind of hoping for it to be over really quick to get back to the regular gameplay, which I was enjoying. With that over and the package in hand, it's time to find a phone so that we can exit the Matrix. We find our phone, but an agent suddenly appears to ruin our day. Again, for the uninitiated, an agent is like a high-level security program within the Matrix. They're super strong, super fast, super deadly. Unless you happen to be Neo, there's only one thing you can do when an agent approaches, and that is run. So I do, over some rooftops, and it takes me a few goes due to the fiddly controls, but I reach a phone and the end of the level. Outside of the Matrix, we get another live-action cutscene. We learn what the package was about. Turns out the machines are amassing a force to invade the city of Zion. An order is put out to contact all captains out there, which Niobe and Ghost volunteer to help with. The best place to do this is through an airport and its many phone lines, so off we go. And this is really the main flaw of the game. You'll have these live action cutscenes tying the levels together, and I must say, they look fantastic. like we mentioned, they were all filmed alongside the second Matrix film, using the same actors, the same sets, the same style. So the quality of them is leaps and bounds above other games that have live action cutscenes implemented into them. Of course, you do get a few games that just take the scenes from the movies, and those look fantastic. But generally when a game makes its own live action scenes, they sometimes come across as a little cheesy and corny. This certainly does not. After your cutscenes, you have the levels themselves. I'm not going to go into too much detail with them, but next up we have an airport level. It was here where things started to click into place a bit more for me. I got used to the game's first person mode when acquiring a sniper rifle, and I started to get a proper handle on the combat flow. It did take a few goes, but there was one particular level here which did frustrate me, where you go under the terminal. But after a while, you just get this feel for how the game plays and its pace. You learn how to disarm the enemies, you learn how to approach groups, and the best way to progress. Towards the end of this level, you do get to fight an agent again, and the game gives you a bit of a hand by making the fight take place in the plane, with the objective being to just kick the agent out of the plane, which was an incredibly cool moment. A sewer level follows next, as our meeting of ship's captains is rudely interrupted, and everyone has to flee. This level, very much like the previous one, very same flow. There is one frustrating section here where you have to provide cover for some friendly characters. Friendly AI was not what I would call great at all. What I would say about the sewer level is it felt overly long, overly repetitive with the environment, but it was okay. From there, we get to meet up with the Merovingian's goons and explore the chateau, which is full of vampires. Yeah, the Matrix has vampires. A vampire is an exiled program that has grown beyond what it was. An exile is a program that was scheduled for deletion but has refused that command, so it lives on. The Merovingian is a character kind of introduced in the second film. He kind of lords it up over all the exiles. The chateau is also where you will encounter a hilariously short level, which is basically just crossing over a hallway. Once through the chateau, we have another handful of driving levels, one of which was a little bit frustrating to get through. You have to catch up to Morpheus, who's fighting on the back of a truck. It wasn't as bad once again I understood the flow of it instead of just driving full pelt. You kind of have to pull back a little bit, use Ghost to take out the vehicles, and when it's clear, push forward. It was also helped when I realised you could change the camera view. This level did further expose how hilariously weird and bad the vehicle physics were though. From here, it's mostly more the same though, which isn't a bad thing because the game plays well enough. Like mentioned, some of the environments are maybe a little overly long, those sewer levels in particular, but I had fun with each combat encounter and the challenge that they presented. Eventually, we get to Seraph's tea house. Here, you have to fight a character called Seraph. If you win, you will meet with the Oracle. If you lose, then you just get put into the final level. If you do get to meet with the Oracle, you will get a handful of extra levels, which is just kind of an extended sequence of you running away from Agent Smith and his various clones. And like I say, if you don't, you'll go straight to the last level of the game. The last level actually taking place in the real world with you controlling the Logos, their ship, and it is bad. It's really bad. It was a letdown. The view here is too small. The ship moves too quickly. Visually, it's dull. It's bad. It's just really, really bad. And it was a bit of a sour end to what had been up until that point a really fun experience. So let's wrap this one up. After 8 or so hours, I reached the end of Niobe's story, and I could play through it again as Ghost to see a bit of a different take on the levels or scenes. But it pretty much ends with the same conclusion, so I am happy to call this one done. Overall, I had a lot of fun with Into the Matrix. It wasn't the smoothest journey. I did get tired of some of the overly long levels at times. I found that the combat did get a little bit repetitive, even though it looked good visually, and the vehicle sections were really poor. But it was still a fun game, and I think it definitely sits into that 6 to 7 out of 10 bracket. Which is no bad thing. No, that is still the mark of a fine game that can be worth playing. The one thing that really does stand out to me though, is that despite the fact that you can tell that it might have been rushed out a little bit for that second movie, is that there was passion put into it. This wasn't a throwaway cash in. This was meant to be part of this wider world and narrative that the Wachowskis were creating. For better or for worse, it's an ambition that I think should be commended. At the same time, I do wonder what would have happened if there wasn't that desire to tie it into the film. You know, did that hold it back a little bit? I can only imagine what it might have been if they had gone for an original story set outside of the films or after the films and had just a little bit more time to really refine it and pull it all together. I also did have this feeling while playing it that, and I don't like to say this sort of thing, but it felt like a game that came out a generation too early. That the ambition they had for it might not have been something that you would have been able to pull off until the mid PS3, Xbox 360 era. Now, I don't like to compare older games to the sort we have now, or newer ones, because it's a bit unfair. You only work within the confines of what is around at the time and the technology available. But it does feel like, in a world where we've got Insomniac's Spider-Man and the Arkham games, the Matrix would fit in bloody perfectly. And I would love to see someone have the license and run with something now. That said, this game is what it is. It's a fine game, even more so if you are a fan of the Matrix, and it pops up cheap enough in stores. I think it goes for about between £2 to £5 in second-hand shops, so definitely give it a go. All of that said, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. Let me know your memories of the game below down in the comments, as well as any memories of the Matrix franchise as a whole. Was this a game that you picked up and played, or has the video inspired you to check it out? Please don't forget to also like the video and subscribe to the channel for more retro gaming goodness. And until next time, thank you once again for watching, and I will see you again in a future video. Goodbye.